Hello. Thank you, Karen, for the introductions and Sue for wrangling our slides. Hello, we are presenting today Map Making, where we share a collaborative data physicalization project that fosters GIS and Makerspace inquiry. My name is Tracy Tien.
I'm Johanna.
And I'm Allegra.
We are colleagues in the research and instructional team within a blended library and technology services at Wellesley College. Next slide, please. Wellesley College is a small women's liberal arts college, part of the Seven Sisters. It's located in the suburbs of Boston. There are about 2,500 undergrads, and you may associate the college with its notable alumni, such as former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright and Hillary Clinton. Perhaps a familiar paradox in liberal arts institutions, Wellesley doesn't have a geography program nor formal GIS courses offered. The GIS infrastructure is built upon a community of practice with faculty, students, and curricular initiatives that uses GIS and spatial analysis in their learning and research. As member of the research and instructional team, we often find opportunities to partner with faculty to incorporate spatial thinking and making into the curriculum. Some recent examples of this include an anthropology course on human evolution, where we 3D scanned footprints and modeled likely dispersal routes for the Homo erectus. Another is an art class titled 4D Design, where we coupled participatory mapping with making machines to enable students to experiment with various forms of media making, whether that be analog, digital, physical, virtual, and something in between. This sets the scene for a question that drives our work. What does it mean to have liberal arts education thinking about the art and science of making and critical spatial thinking? One approach to address the question is often finding avenues to make this legible on campus, such as GIS Day, or in this project, Wellesley's spinoff of University of Michigan's ICPSR Love Data Week. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to just give a small overview of the project itself. For the first iteration, which was in 2024, we created a single wall map land use and land cover in Massachusetts using folded paper pyramids that were then taped to the wall. For the second iteration in 2025, we wanted to link GIS and fabrication a little bit more clearly, so we decided to create a second layer to the project. This time, we used data sets from the Korean peninsula with those same paper pyramids taped to the wall representing nighttime lights, and then also a new cross-stitch frame that was representing population density. For both years, the pyramid wall was located in the main hallway of our temporary library building, which is called the mods or the modulars. So in 2025, the frame was actually mostly woven at a pop-up location in the campus center over the course of one day. And then it was brought back to the mods in front of the paper pyramid wall for a wrap-up event in the afternoon. Next slide.
So the idea for this project came about because we had this desire to create opportunities for liberal arts students to make connections and explore intersections. Because we're in a library, because we're in this merged setting, this is a goal that we frequently have. And in this case, we specifically wanted to create a place for people to explore GIS, data, labor, and making, and the intersections between. The initial idea was that we wanted to make something large, something collaborative, something eye-catching, and we wanted to do it participatorily. We wanted the entire community to somehow have a piece of being able to make this large thing. We imagined some sort of pixel-based wall installation that might be made up of small origami-like pieces, something that everybody could assemble over time by the community. So pixel-based, this naturally brought to mind raster data, and this data physicalization project thus was born. And data physicalization ended up being a really fitting way to frame this project. It kind of foregrounds human labor in the data visualization process. People were making, so that the act of making offers opportunity for the participants to kind of form a relationship with the data itself, right? As you're making the thing, you're thinking about what is this? What does it mean? Where does it go? And the human element of this whole project really draws attention to processes in data that can often be really abstract and distant.
Threading a multidisciplinary perspective across an idea like this is what we envision as liberal arts. Facilitating GIS at Wellesley is about generating pathways of learning and discovery without a formal infrastructure. Sometimes this materializes in a serendipitous connection. So for example, in our 2024 event, we had oranges as snacks. And as a student was peeling the orange, they happened to peel it in exactly a single strip. So some of you might be gasping in the audience because this is a orange peel map projection in the wild. This then served as the inspiration for a GIS Day event the following fall. And using the data physicalization framework also makes GIS legible and appealing in a way that software can't. Next slide, please. In terms of the logistics of preparing everything, for the Massachusetts land use land cover map, we started with subsetting the LLCD data to Massachusetts. Then we created a minimum bounding geometry with the envelope method. A tessellation was created to generate grids that make the activity feasible, so we ended up with something like 987 squares while staying true to the data set. Each square represents the majority land use land cover category from zonal statistics.
Yeah, so these 1,000 or so squares, Tracy calculated how many of each color we would need. And then the student workers of the Makerspace were really instrumental in helping prepare for fabricating them. So we used a Cameo paper cutter, which is a kind of electronic knife cutter, to cut out the template for each of the squares, which would then be folded by the community and taped to the wall. The student workers also drew a grid on the wall and labeled each square with the land cover code. Next slide, please.
The second year, we chose the nighttime lights on the Korean Peninsula for two primary reasons. A non-Western centric geography that highlights the strength of a novel data set. The Korean Peninsula has a stark contrast between the north and south along the DMZ, which shows prominently in the nighttime lights data. We also wanted to demonstrate physically the concept of GIS layers, thus adding population density that is often complementary to nighttime lights. These layers are also demonstrative of quantitative data that are binned into classes that represent ranges. The data sets were resampled to a coarser resolution, then reclassified into 5 classes.
And to prepare for the fabrication component, we once again turned to the student workers for help. They once again cut paper for the pyramids, and they also constructed this frame out of PVC pipes, wire fencing, tied together with zip ties, and then spray painted the whole thing for cohesion. The frame was what allowed us to participate across campus and weave the second layer of data. Next slide.
One slide back, please. Ooh.
Oh,
Allegra, do you want to go ahead and talk about outreach?
yeah, I can go ahead and sorry, there's supposed to be a slide about outreach there. Not sure what happened. But I get to talk a little bit about some of the outreach that we did. So the mods themselves are a pretty tough space. They are temporary trailers that are tucked into kind of a weird corner of campus. There's not a lot of organic foot traffic. So for both iterations of the event, we had to utilize a lot of signage just around campus. And it was really nice to be part of the Love Data Week events and everything because we got to really utilize a lot of the existing knowledge and excitement through that. In 2024, the first iteration, people were interested but hesitant to actually participate by folding or taping or anything like that. But once the activity was explained to them, a lot of the library student workers especially got really, really into folding pyramids. We realized that we needed to concentrate on signage that made patrons feel comfortable, able, and interested in participating for 2025. So some of the things that we thought about included things like explicitly inviting participation, demystifying GIS by providing information about the data sources and the methodologies, and also for the second year especially, explaining the multi-layered nature of the project.
Yeah, so over the course of these 2 years, we noticed the community participating in this event in a myriad of ways, which was wonderful. So we noticed conversations emerging and the community sort of making sense of what was going on. We saw groups gathering in the hallway, pointing to the map, talking about it, trying to figure out what was this blob of color over in the western part of Massachusetts. We also noticed people making this activity part of their daily routine. So the low barrier craft activity of folding squares, it was easy enough to figure out. It was a repetitive task, and it meant people could do it regularly. We saw people taking the squares back to their desk. We saw people who would stop by the wall on their morning coffee break, and really bringing it into their routine. Next slide.
Continuing to reflect, we grappled with balancing breadth and depth. What we perceived as depth in our design in the second year, things such as physicalizing GIS layers, making the geoprocessing transparent, advancing the fabrication techniques, didn't necessarily result in a richer experience for participants. It may have actually been the simplicity and novelty in the first year that were generative. Our interdisciplinary approach to selecting a subject that have wide breadth may also have been lost, even though it is part of a larger Love Data Week programming. So a key question about outreach remains, how much explanation is optimal? We're balancing the need for clarity with the desire to encourage independent discovery, especially considering the pyramid wall is often unsupervised throughout the week. Signage in a future iteration may include a clear introduction to the purpose of the project, prompts that encourage reflection on how data is represented and interpreted, either explicit explanation or guiding questions that help patrons connect GIS and making to various academic disciplines and current events.
My cat. Some of the recommendations that we would have for anybody interested in hosting a similar event in their own space. Number one would be leveraging low stakes crafting with a topic hook. So patrons are they really liked the simple act of folding pyramids, and pairing this with a relatable initial topic like a local map generated more immediate interest in questions. And also, if you're in Massachusetts, it gets a lot of people doing the Cape Cod hook with their arms. Explicitly inviting people to participate and providing guidance. While some of the people enjoyed the open-endedness of the pyramid folding, others were hesitant to try it until they actually watched somebody explain how to do it. So that would be our second recommendation. Our third would be experiment with strategies to guide curiosity. So design elements and prompts that encourage patrons to explore the why might foster deeper engagement beyond the initial activity. And our last recommendation would be to start prep early, allowing ample time for setup, and involve the participants like student workers in the prep to build ownership and enthusiasm, and also to have an ample supply of whatever craft material that you decide on, because a lot of it will just walk away accidentally. People might like take things and then go back to their desk and just kind of forget it. So that would be our last recommendation. Next slide.
All right, so in conclusion, this was a really fun data physicalization project. It also offered us the opportunity to kind of do something together as a community. We think there's a lot of value in doing things together. So on one level, we were creating a tactile map together. We were collaboratively crafting. Those were great things to do together. And also we were making sense and we were making meaning together. As we were making the visualization, we were asking, why do we visualize data? Why are we doing this? Why are we making things? What does this mean to us as a community together? And one of the things we were making sense of through this project was this idea of labor, which has come up a couple of times today. So our goal was to make the labor of data kind of more visible, draw attention to it, which I think we did, but we also ended up creating sort of new forms of labor and made some forms of labor invisible. So as always, it's a more nuanced and complicated thing than we might want to think. So for example, the story that we tell of this is sort of the community effort. Like, look at this installation that the community made. And we kind of hide some of the effort that we put in as staff. It was a lot of work, and the student workers, the scaffolding for this. This was not something that just appeared on the wall. There was a lot of steps to enable the community to do this. there was also a fair amount of continued labor and maintenance required. So the squares would start to fall off the wall. And every time I saw it, I would sort of, I don't know, get a little bit of get sad about that. But we noticed that the community was actually fixing it, that students would see squares on the wall and put them back on, put them back up. So that showed that they cared enough about the project to continue taking care of it.
In conclusion, this project was a gratifying experience collaborating with colleagues and coalescing our respective crafts to share with the broader community. It gave us a unique insight into actually observing how people interact with making and learning, whether that be tangible or intangible, spatial or otherwise. The iterative process and labor in evolving the project may ultimately be our contribution to modeling what making things, making maps, and making meaning with a community could look like. Next slide, please. And thank you. Here are our contact information should you have any questions. And I think we have some time for questions as well.